Morning, all. So we've got a news video and then just a quick preview of the two games tonight between four teams. One of them is still technically alive for the playoffs, but I think their opponent might put them out of their misery tonight. Just that's the way that season series is gone. So we're going to start off with the Department of Player Safety being very busy. And I couldn't help but notice that all of these incidents involve teams that are going to end up playing each other in the playoffs that happened last night. So first, it's Edmondson getting fined $1,000 for tripping John Tavares last night. So Montreal and Toronto. It's likely they play each other in the first round. And it feels like this is probably one of those, okay, you guys are going to play each other. We saw this happen. We don't want things to escalate. Florida, Uyghur fined $5,000 for a high stick on Matthew Joseph. Also, Brandon Montour fined $5,000 for spearing Maroon. They're back. Yeah, there's two Stellar Jays that sit outside the window now. They actually sit on a railing or they sit at the window and they taunt the cats. It's one of the funniest things I've ever seen. So if you hear a bird squawking, it's one of the Stellar Jays. And now we've got two of them. Because I guess he either brought a friend or he brought his girlfriend or something. Like, hey, look how I can make these cats go nuts. So that's why Bears turned to face the window and Shadow's already in the window. They were actually out there calling the cats before the cats were in the window this morning. So it's fun entertainment. Montour fined $5,000, Uyghur $5,000. So that's $10,000 between the two of them. And Pat Maroon is going to have a hearing for roughing Montour, who speared him. So that means Maroon's going to get suspended. Probably just the season finale tomorrow. And then they play each other in the first round. And I'm kind of nerdily excited about it. This is going to be great. We're seeing hearings and suspensions and all this. And yeah, Department of Player Safety could be very busy during the first two rounds. These teams are all kind of tired of each other. And so I'm looking forward to covering that series. And Montreal-Toronto could end up being really interesting as well. If Montreal were to win game one, then you start, right? Doesn't take much. Columbus, it's mutual. Last night, after the game was done, it came out that John Tortorella wasn't interested in renewing his contract this summer. And apparently Columbus completely and totally agrees. So it is a mutual parting of ways between John Tortorella and the Columbus Blue Jackets. So that tenure is done. We saw this coming, and it's bizarre to me that he survived the whole season and that Columbus didn't make some sort of a change early on when they could see how ugly this was going to get. They backed him over Dubois, which I was okay with because, Dubois was out there having the shift, and you can't have that. And I'm not sure that moving Tortorella out and bringing in a new coach is necessarily going to help in terms of attracting free agents. Because again, from Panarin, Bobrovsky, these guys didn't seem to leave because of any reason other than Columbus just didn't look like a place they wanted to spend the rest of their careers potentially. So again, Columbus has a lot to get in order here. Aaron Portzline last night as well saying this is the most tumultuous, disappointing season the team's had in their history, which is saying something. And I agree. I think that while we may not have expected playoffs necessarily, at least we expected them to be competitive right down the wire, right? So we'll see what they do in the offseason. Jarmo Kekalainen has some work left to do and some contract talks to get done as well in the offseason. So they're going to be fascinating to watch. Toronto last night won their first division title since 1999-2000, and I remember that team well. There was a lot of hype about the late 90s, early 2000s Maple Leafs too. This was a team that spent a lot of money. They brought in a lot of veterans. They had some really fantastic goaltending as well. Whether it was Cujo, whether it was Belfour, they had some pretty solid, reliable goaltending. This team is a completely different beast. That team would have loved to have had an Austin Matthews on it. And this team, I think, would love to have an Ed Belfour or Curtis Joseph in their prime. And I say that knowing that when Belfour got to Toronto, I wouldn't say he was in his prime, but he was still pretty darn good. And so we'll see how things go for Toronto in the postseason. But I'm glad to see them win their division title. Yeah, people can throw asterisks on it all they want. The Atlantic Division is going to be just absolutely ridiculous next year. So good on them. and the players are excited, and that could be huge for their confidence. If they go out there and they win a first round, and if they come out of the Canadian division as the winner, could be huge for their confidence going into next season and beyond, regardless of what happens in that Final Four. Phil Kessel, last night, the final game for the Arizona Coyotes, plays his 900th straight games. So he is the 5th NHLer in history to reach 900 straight games. That's an impressive total. That is a lot of games that he's played in a row. He hasn't missed any, and this is even with the last couple of seasons and all the bonkers craziness that's gone on. This is also with the contracted schedule they had this year. Didn't miss a game. So, and he arguably was Arizona's best player as well. You can argue that because there's Garland, there's Keller, Kemper when he's on, right? When he's healthy, which this year he really wasn't for a long enough period of time. But yeah, so Phil Kessel, I think, stays in Arizona. I'd be very surprised if they moved him in the offseason. And I think it's been a good fit. Interesting note. So yesterday, of course, Connor McDavid gets his 100th point, his 53rd game. He needed 4 points. So he gets all 4 against Vancouver. And it's weird. Brings flashbacks for a guy like me that cheered for the Canucks in the 80s and the 90s. Every time Gretzky needed a milestone, he'd just play Vancouver and get it. So if you need a milestone, play Vancouver. And there are other players over the years, too, that got milestones against Vancouver. When I do historical videos, I'm always surprised that, this guy got his 500th point against Vancouver. He got his 1,000th point against Vancouver. 500th goal, Vancouver. It all checks out. So it is interesting. It is a tradition the Canucks have continued. It is an underrated tradition that I don't think we talk enough about. That if you need a milestone, I'll play Vancouver. So also noticed last night that Draisaitl got his 500th point. So play Vancouver. I would love to see that change at some point, but I don't think it's going to. I think it's just that's the way things work for the Canucks. Milestones are scored against them. So there you go. You got to find a sense of humor with that when you're a Canucks fan for that long. All right, so today's games, one starting at 4 o'clock, one starting at 5. We've got the Dallas Stars, and I mean Pacific, 7 o'clock Eastern, and then 8 o'clock Eastern for the second game. We've got the Dallas Stars and the Chicago Blackhawks. Dallas 22, 18, and 14. They were mathematically eliminated last night from the playoffs by the Nashville Predators. Chicago 23, 25, and 6. Chicago's won 4 of 6 in this season series. Pavelski is, to me, the MVP for Dallas. 24 goals, 26 assists. Yes, honorable mentions to Hintz and Robertson, and those three together, absolutely dynamite. We'll see if they leave them together for next year, and how expansion works for Dallas. Because Pavelski, to me, is one of those ones where it's like, okay, they can protect him and lose a really good young player, potentially, or protect Pavelski. So we'll get into that when we get closer to expansion draft. And, of course, on Chicago's side, how can I not go with Patrick Kane as being their MVP? 15 goals, 49 assists, 64 points. He's been absolutely fantastic throughout the season. Slowed down a bit recently, but that's just comparatively speaking to the fantastic total he was putting up early on. And then we've got Ottawa against the Calgary Flames. Ottawa 22, 27, and 5. The Flames still mathematically alive, 22, 26, and 3. They need to run the table, and they need Montreal to lose every game. That's how Calgary would make the playoffs. I don't think it happens. I'm just going to say. And Ottawa's won 6 out of 8, and they've won the last 4 meetings with the Calgary Flames. So Ottawa could very well just end Calgary's season tonight. Brady Tkachuk, to me, has been the MVP for the Ottawa Senators. 17 goals, 18 assists, which is good because that's Ottawa named him as their MVP as well. But I can't disagree with that. If we had an 82-game schedule, Tkachuk would be on pace for at least 55 points, 25 goals, maybe 30. Yeah, he's really emerged as the better of the two Tkachuks for this season. We'll see if it stays that way, the battle of the two Tkachuks, right? And then Elias Lindholm. Had to go with Elias Lindholm for the Calgary Flames. 17 goals, 26 assists, 43 points. It's been a down year for Calgary, but Lindholm's been solid all the way through. And yeah, so we'll see how things go for them tonight. Let me know which two teams you think win tonight out of these games. We have a 9-game night tomorrow, which is the busiest night remaining, which It's busy, but it's not bad. That's not really a big deal. And the weirdest thing, of course, is this is where the board that I use for the goals with all the goal magnets and the team previews and all that. When I start taking the magnets off the board, it's like, oh, because this team's season is over. So right now, I think there's 6 teams that have finished their season. Yeah, it is that time of year already. It feels like the season just started, so it's weird because in covering hockey every single night and the fact that there weren't any days off throughout the schedule, it just sneaks up on you. At least it did for me. All right, so let me know your thoughts. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe if you're browsing your way through. You just happened upon this video. Thank you guys so much for all your support. I will talk to you again soon.